This is my heater. I dare you to hit it.
He'll be sorry.
Want the heater? I'll give it to you.
Basketball, maybe they don't hit it.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
What up? What good? What good? We did it again. Baseball and Stitch. We're back. Apparently that's a new thing. Not sure that I'm all that happy about that, but hey, so is life.
We'll put it on a t-shirt.
We might have to put it on a t-shirt. Crazy town for you. What good for me? Great. So excited. Flax, how was the weekend?
Weekend was good. Weekend's rarely not good, to be quite honest with you. But it was opening weekend, right? Got to see a lot of good baseball, some bad baseball, but overall, everybody's as fresh as they could be. Everyone gets to start from zero, so it's the best time of year.
Totally agree. Really excited to see what happens after the first 3 games of the year we've been able to see for everybody's teams. We've got a pretty awesome episode for you guys this week. The one, the only, Tim Kurkjian joined us on the podcast this week, and we are so excited to share our interview with him with you guys. It was just a wonderful experience. Tim is an awesome human being, and by golly, does that man have some awesome baseball stories.
Yeah, you guys will see. We didn't even ask him a question. He came in with a story immediately. That's just kind of his thing, and we love it. It's an iconic voice. He's got an iconic laugh. It was a lot of fun to sit down with him. We got a full 38 minutes, which we were shocked to get that much time from him, which was amazing. So you guys are going to enjoy it. But I know we got a couple other things to talk about before we get going.
100%. So where are we going to start today prior to the Tim Kurkjian interview? And that's going to be pretty simple. We're going to give you guys some of our overarching thoughts over the first 3 games worth of Major League Baseball that have been played so far. And then we're going to go ahead and move on, share the interview, and over to final thoughts after that. Flax, first and foremost, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty positive the Dodgers probably won't win every game this year.
No, probably not, but you can't win all 162 without winning the first 5. So they are well on their way. But no, I mean, listen, they won some pretty close games. When you looked into the numbers, they got a little bit lucky in a couple of those. There was an extra innings, or not an extra innings, but a call that sent the game to extra innings in Game 2 of that series with the Tigers that I'm still not sure where Manny Margot was tagged at the plate, but apparently he was. Replay confirmed. So it's, again, we don't want to overreact, but they are a very good ball club. They've got a lot of pieces that make them very hard to beat.
Let's go to the other side. The Braves, they are winless so far. Not sure how you feel about that. I'm not super stressed about them. I know that my Nationals are planning on giving them 1 or 2 wins this year at least. But thoughts on where the Braves are at so far in 3 games?
Well, I'll say the opposite. You can't lose all 162 if you don't lose the first 3. But realistically, no. I mean, there will be an insurgence into the offense when Acuna comes back. They got to get their sea legs. Kelnick looked really good. Profar looked phenomenal through the first 3 games at the plate. I think he saw like 75 pitches through his first 3 games, which is an absurd number. It might have only been through the first 2. And the starting rotation was good, right? That's a really tough offense to get through with the Padres. I know the Padres had an odd offseason, but they've got so many pieces in that lineup. It's hard to get through, and it's a tough team to beat. The Braves will be better for it, and I'm sure their schedule will lighten up a little bit coming here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, to boot, Schwellenbach looked excellent yesterday. What they found with him is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So that's one upside piece there too. And then to boot, Spencer Strider was on the hill yesterday in a minor league rehab start. So again, why are we bringing these 2 teams up? It's really more to remind you guys that nobody's going to lose everything and nobody's going to win everything. And at the end of the day, good teams are going to find themselves on both sides of this coin, and early overreactions are normally more stress than they're worth to all of you. That's what we're here to tell you today. Now, let's drop into some topics of discussion over these first 3 games. And look, everybody was giving us a hard time for how much we like to talk about the White Sox, but wow, did that starting staff so far in Sean Burke, Jonathan Cannon, and Davis Martin look good through 3 games for a team that lost 121 games last year. It was really nice to watch them go out and have starters who were keeping them in the ball game. These 3 starters combined for 17 innings of no earned run baseball and 10 Ks. Just nice to see the White Sox playing well again. Flax?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else you expect if you're a White Sox fan, or what else you would want if you're a White Sox fan. I mean, Jonathan Cannon was one of the top-line guys at Georgia in that 2020 season that got shortened, and that team was one of the better teams in college baseball when that happened. So he obviously has had the stuff for a long time now, getting the opportunity to be one of the top or one of the frontline starters on a major league ball club. Sean Burke was exceptional. Again, they faced the Angels. Everyone in that lineup is a big league hitter, some easier to get out than others. But they took advantage when they needed to take advantage. They kept a guy like Mike Trout at bay. Nolan Shawnoel was not on base consistently like he usually is. They were taking advantage and getting in the zone early in the count. They were forcing the Angels to beat them. And then turn it around, and you actually have offensive pieces that are doing what you paid them to do. Benintendi hitting a home run game 1 of the year was the greatest thing that the White Sox could have seen. They would love to see a good year out of him, a guy that they've given, I think it's their largest contract in history to. So it was a big weekend for the White Sox for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. And, just throwing some more numbers onto it, I'm glad you highlighted Cannon because, I was going to move into Burke and Martin, which is great. Burke showed a lead extension, which is something that we really love to see, meaning that he was releasing the ball closer to the plate, makes his stuff get on you faster, also generally can make it harder to hit just in general, right? If we're adding miles per hour to the visual, tends to help you. Additionally, too, he didn't give up a hit on the slider, which is going to be his most formidable out pitch this year. And then Davis Martin did one thing that's extremely important. He kept the ball on the ground. His ground ball rate throughout the game was increased compared to what it was last year. Again, Angels, 1 start. This is not meant to be an overreaction. Just some good highlights in what we were seeing from the White Sox. So really excited to see what they do throughout the year. Wanted to move into 2 other starting pitchers right now, and 2 technically aces for their own staffs and clubs here within Pedro Severino and Clay Holmes. I got to watch the entirety of the Pedro Severino start with the A's. And my gosh, did he look good. The sweeper was absolutely brutal.
Stuff was moving.
He was putting the ball wherever he wanted across the board. To be honest, wasn't expecting it. That's probably the best way for me to put it. Flax, what did you think on Severino?
I don't know that I wasn't expecting it. I think it was better than I expected it to be. Right? I think I still thought he was going to come out and at least keep them in a ball game. Again, he was at T-Mobile in Seattle, notably a pitcher's ballpark, facing an offense that didn't make a ton of moves to make themselves much tougher of an offense to go up against with the Mariners. Yeah. So he had a lot in his favor, but he did a great job of taking advantage of that and putting together good pitches. Good pitches when it mattered too. I mean, the backdoor sweeper to Rowdy Tellez had an unreal amount of horizontal movement. And to put a pitch where he put it, there's no way Tellez was ever going to swing. That's a pitch you give up on as a hitter when it's halfway to the plate. It looks like it's in the other box. And then for it to come back and catch the edge, there's just nothing you can do there. And for that to be his last pitch of the day, you saw it even on the bench afterwards. The entire pitching staff, I saw Jeffrey Springs next to him. They watched it over again, and they were all just like, oh, my God, that was insane. You know, so it was good to see him come out. The stuff was working. The ball was moving. It was awesome.
It's hard to understand how you're even supposed to pull the trigger as a hitter on a backdoor sweeper of that nature. The ball was over the right-handed batter's box line when it started, and for that to come all the way back, hit the outside corner. I mean, Tellez just dropped his bat and walked back to the dugout. I don't blame him. I don't think I'd have done anything different in that scenario. So, look, Pedro and the A's, man, they're going to be scrappy. They're going to be as scrappy as we thought they were across the board. The bats are looking like they're going to do a little bit. Tyler Soderstrom looked great in so far the 3 games that he's gotten to start this year. He's gotten 3 home runs so far, and he's used all sides of the field. So Look, A's got a lot of fun stuff going on. Now, on the flip side, the New York Mets game 1 did not go the way they wanted to. Clay Holmes threw to a line of 4 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs, 2 earned runs, 4 walks, and 4 strikeouts over the start. Maybe not the start that people were hoping for Holmes and the Mets. Even Soto sounded a little disappointed at the end of the game. Flash, your thoughts on how that game went?
I think for me, the biggest thing that stands out from his line is the 4 walks. It was something we knew was going to be a problem because it was something he did out of the bullpen just as well. And I think when he got a little bit unlucky, because that's just the truth, some of the balls that went and landed in play that shouldn't have landed or had a very low expected batting average, they get amplified or they get exponentially worse when you have guys that are already on base. And by walking 4 guys over 4 innings, you're not helping yourself. So I think that's the thing that stands out the most for me. If we can clean that up, he probably gets another inning. He probably doesn't have those amplified mistakes or balls that tend to drop that shouldn't drop that are just going to happen every single game because that's baseball. I think there's still a lot of upside for him there. It's a work in progress, right? You're taking a guy who's been a back-end reliever, turning him into a starter. It was never going to be ace stuff on day one.
Well, I think the biggest piece here is that Seth Lugo last year gave everybody an unreal expectation of what's going to happen when you take somebody out of the pen and put him in a rotation. I think Holmes is going to be just fine. I don't think this is anything to overreact about. I think the other piece, too, is leading a staff, which is or seems to be what they're expecting him to do, does take its own mindset and mental adjustment from an overall standpoint. I know most Mets fans are stating that Senga is the ace. However, with the language barrier and different things of that nature, there is going to be a lot that probably falls on Holmes to be the vocal leader of that staff. So I am excited to see what happens. Again, no need for any type of overreaction here. Holmes' stuff still looked great. Just need him to be in the zone more consistently to be effective.
I mean, realistically, you're looking at a very similar situation to a bunch of teams out there. And really what it is that's a staff that's going to need to throw more quality starts and an offense that's just going to have to hit better. The rest of the lineup besides Soto, I believe, has an OPS under 700 right now. Soto's is like 1300, right? So he can't be the only guy. Lindor's got to get on base in front of him. Pete's got to start putting the ball in play a little more. He's got to start working at bats and being aggressive at the right times a little bit more. I think that's the biggest thing for me. Clay Holmes going 4 innings and then still keeping that a 3-1 ball game for as long as they did tells me that their team is set up to win a lot of ball games. Again, the Astros have a solid bullpen, whether people want to believe it or not. Josh Hader is going to be Josh Hader this year. He's going to be really good. The stuff that he threw Soto made Soto look like a bad hitter. Soto doesn't do that very often. Really elite stuff and really elite arms make a guy like Soto do that. That's why Hader is who he is. I think that the rest of the offense probably needed to just do a little bit more leading up to that point in that game.
Totally agree. And again, as we'll remind you guys, the Mets offense is going to find it, right? 3 days in, I think Soto would love to have a little bit more help 3 days in. However, the one thing we can guarantee is that Juan Soto will hit. So it also doesn't surprise us that we're talking about the fact that Soto is leading the team from an overall standpoint.
He said it himself when the media asked him, are you upset with the slow start from the offense? And I think he said something to the effect of, it's going to get better. We obviously want to win this year, but we got 15 years. We're going to be okay, right? Like, that's a guy who gets it.
100%. Moving right along here, one of the more interesting storylines of the weekend. Marcelo Meyer was interviewed at AAA. Where is Boston's AAA? Uh-oh.
Worcester?
Yeah, I believe it is Worcester. And if it's not Worcester, somebody correct us. Either way, he was...
It's not Worcester.
He was interviewed while he was at the AAA location complex. And the question was brought up to him and asked of whether or not he thought he did enough to make the MLB roster this year. Meyer's response was essentially, yes, I'm not sure what else I could have done. I feel as if I should have been on the roster. everybody can feel how they want to feel. I think everybody should go watch this interview. But really where I want to touch on this is, Flax, it's really hard for me to watch a young guy who very obviously even stated has not been given a timeline. There is a level of frustration for him that he's not on that roster currently.
Yep.
It's a very sticky situation. So for me personally, as a front office piece, if we put the GM hat on, it's tough for me to understand, one, why Meyer is sitting in this spot where he can put himself in a spot to say something like this to the media, and why we don't have better communication to one of the top potentially 5 prospects in all of baseball.
So this is now the second example this offseason by the Boston Red Sox of their lack of communication from the front office down to the people on the field. And when I say people on the field, I'm referring to everybody as far as the manager and the decisions that they make of where to put people on the field and the players themselves. First example, obviously, was the Alex Bregman situation and Rafi Devers. Not having the lines of communication so that Rafi Devers didn't feel backhanded by Alex Bregman coming in and, surprise to nobody, taking his spot at third base defensively. Now, again, we're sitting here and hearing Marcelo Meyer make the comment that he's not given a timeline. I don't really care much that he didn't make the roster. When you look at the roster construction, it's a good offense as it exists. I don't know that he necessarily fits yet. Someone will get hurt. He and Roman Anthony will most likely be the next likely pieces coming up to that team. The biggest issue for me is that he doesn't know that. Right? The fact that that line of communication from either Craig Breslow or from player development hasn't sat down with him and said, here's the timeline. These guys are so good. Obviously, the mountaintop for them is making it to the MLB and staying there. But you have to give them a roadmap. You've got to give them peaks along the way that they can climb to and know that they're doing the right things. Hey, when you're down at AA, here's what we're expecting of you. So if it's not production results, the guys aren't hung up on their batting average, their home runs, their doubles, their strikeout percentages, their walk percentages. Maybe the ask is, hey, we want you to focus on taking better at bats as a whole. We want you to see more pitches. We notice that you get ahead in the count. We notice that you swing too early in the count. You don't wait till you get a certain pitch to hit. If a guy was told those sorts of things, he'd feel more comfortable in what he's doing. I fear that Marcelo Meyer is getting put in a position where he feels it's a do-or-die scenario with the way he produces. I think he's a great ball player. The chances that he still produces are extremely high. But putting a guy in that position who's one of your top-end prospects can't necessarily breed the best results in the long term.
Sure, and the other piece to think about here is what makes this difficult. One, we talk about MLB service time. We talk about options. Meyer's young. He's got all of his options. Hasn't made a major league debut yet. There is more than likely, whether people like it or not, a level of trying to decide when makes sense to bring him up in order to have the young core and the big 3 for as long as humanly possible, knowing that you will not be able to keep all of them more than likely. It has been already stated that they're in extension talks with Kurkjian Campbell, who, by the way, after the first week, he's had 6 for 11 on friggin' fire.
He's the best player on that roster right now.
Yeah, kind of looks like it. It's been a very impressive start for him. But let's swing this back to Breslow in the front office. What kills me about this is very simple. The Boston Red Sox had arguably the best offseason of anybody in baseball. It is really difficult for me to continue to see what seems to be internal communication issues happening and taking away from the offseason that Breslow and company had. And that's the big piece for us is we're not here to rag on Breslow or the front office group. It's just more confusing that we have been so good in most facets, and there does seem to be things, as we would say in sales, leaking out the bottom. That's not something that I would expect, and I do expect this to improve as this new group in Boston moves forward, but it is still a tough situation to deal with at the current moment.
Well, and that's the other thing I was going to say, right, is these guys who are top prospects really got hit with a big changing of the guard, right? They were selected, they were positioned as prospects by a completely different front office. Yeah. And while that front office did a great job of stockpiling prospects, their process for moving them through the system has to be different than what Craig Breslow and team are intending to do, right? So this is the next step here of, as a front office, you can't just have great prospects, you have to have a plan. And this is why I think teams like the Guardians, teams like the Astros, and now from what we're seeing with Mike Elias moving from the Astros to the Orioles, we're seeing guys that are traditionally moving through systems at a consistent pace. And I said this to you yesterday. I can tell a lot about how good a front office is by how consistent and standardized their process is for moving their best talent through their system. One of the things that we've seen from teams is their top echelon of talent comes really quick, and their lower echelon of talent basically gets left by the wayside. Look at the Angels. I don't necessarily know that that's the best move for their top echelon of talent. They kind of love this, attitude of let the kids play. Some guys it's great. Some guys it's a little confusing. They also have a cluster of prospects that never see the light of day because they're stuck in a position with now having the youngest players in baseball sitting in front of them at the same position. Whereas you take a team like the Guardians, who always seem to have holes to fill because the process they use is, I'm not going to go pay big money for big players. I'm going to bring guys up to the system. I'm going to make them believe in Cleveland, and I'm going to make them want to sign here and be in the Cleveland Guardians system through and through. And they do a great job of that, right? Whether you want to believe it or not, that's why they're competitive year in and year out. So I don't necessarily love it out of the Red Sox camp, but like you said, there's a learning curve to being a front office, and I think Craig Breslow will figure it out because I think he knows what it's like being in that situation as a player.
100%, and I think that's what is on Breslow and his team's side.
Right.
There always is going to be benefits of where you come from as a general manager, and one of the things that Breslow can do is easily relate to these players and the journey it took to get to the major league level. So again, we highly recommend you guys go watch the Marcelo Meyer interview. Very interesting. One of the most talented players in baseball. He is known to be a relatively outspoken character, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it at the end of the day. But communication. If you take one thing from this podcast that has nothing to do with the baseball, it's going to be that. Communication. Either way, moving on to our final small tidbit here before the Tim Kurkjian interview, and we've got to touch on this one, and that is torpedoes. Major League Baseball players are now using torpedoes. And what are we talking about? We're talking about the torpedo bats that are currently being used by the New York Yankees, and 4 other teams did have players utilize torpedo bats over the first 3 games of the Major League season. What is a torpedo bat? Well, one, you should absolutely go ahead and throw torpedo bat into the Google machine and find one Kevin Smith's thread on X, Twitter, whatever you'd like to call it, where he breaks down the whole scenario and what these torpedo bats are. For a quick breakdown and understanding, basically what we're talking about is they've taken a little bit of the wood from the handle type area, they've moved it closer to the barrel, and they've also made the tip end of the bat a little bit smaller. What this has done is basically made one major fatty area of the barrel. And the best way for us to put it to our listeners is probably aim small, miss small. And also it's putting the heaviest part of the bat where you mainly make contact to the baseball. Ergo, more consistent results when you hit the barrel. And the New York Yankees have hit 13 home runs over 3 games. So not all of those guys were using torpedo bats, but I can tell you Jazz Chisholm has 3 home runs, and he is one of the guys using the torpedo bats. I can tell you that Volpe has a home run. I almost thought it was 2 home runs. It's 2 with the torpedo bats.
Utah.
So, point being is these torpedo bats are very interesting, and this is going to be a whole thing. It's going to be very interesting to see how the MLB continues to react with it, which I did see something today stating they've already said that they're completely legal and within confines of a Major League Baseball bat, which I do believe is true. They haven't done anything special. But there are 2 possible outcomes here, and that's really simple. Either Major League Baseball says, yeah, this is what it is, and you will see very quickly over the next 162 games, majority of players moving to these torpedo bats, if I had to guess.
I hope so.
Or you will see the Major League Baseball with maybe pushing and backing from manufacturers of bats, depending how easy this is to do, basically saying that these are going to be illegal and an advantage so that they don't have to deal with any types of changes within the industry or Major League Baseball. Either way, we have a new weapon in baseball for the first time in literally, I don't know, at least 50 plus years. Flax,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of innovation in sport. Let's start there. The guy that the Yankees hired some years ago, right? This wasn't like a now thing that just happened this year. But this guy, Lenny, from MIT, as Kevin Smith refers to him, basically had this thought of there is a maximum barrel width that bats are allowed to have according to Major League Baseball rules. Most guys don't meet that width. Most guys have smaller barrel bats. The reason guys have smaller barrel bats is actually for a purpose. Most guys believe a smaller barrel bat is actually denser, and with an end-loaded, denser barrel, you can get much stronger exit velocities. But over the course of a season, a lot of those smaller barrels can lead to balls that you may just nick or you may flare, and turning those nicks into flares that could be hits or those flares into solid contact can lead to better results over time. Now, again, the prerequisite here is you're already an elite hitter. You're already someone who generates good exit velocity. If you are a hitter that hits the ball somewhere between 95 to 105 miles an hour at the right launch angle, 99% of the time it turns out to be a home run. So if you're a guy that already hits the ball hard and your hardest hit ball is 110, 115, you can sacrifice a little bit of exit velocity to have a larger space to potentially make better contact with the baseball. Not only that, you notice, and they really dug into it, guys like Anthony Volpe had a really hard time with inner half pitches. They would find more of the label of the bat than they would find the barrel of the bat. So shifting that weight or shifting that barrel and the wood of the barrel closer to that label leads for the exact same swing, but better results. Again, we're changing the arrow, not the archer. Changing what the archer does is really hard at 20 to 30 years old. Guys have ingrained processes, but put something different in their hands to let them see better results doing the same thing they've always done, you're going to have a lot of success. And that's really what they're doing here. But you're already seeing guys from the Twins are using it. I think we saw somebody on the Rays was already using it. Junior Caminero was using it today. So a lot of guys are going to start picking up on it. I have a feeling guys who hadn't heard about it already called their agents the next day and said, get me a couple of those bats so that I can start using it in batting practice in the cages and potentially putting it into practice in the game.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this. I told you that I needed to go get myself one of these the moment that it happened. So I'm all about this. I think it's great for baseball. In reality, again, think about it. When's the last time anybody listening to this heard about a change to the Major League Baseball bat? It is one of the least changed objects in all of sport, in my personal opinion. So
everybody always talks about those guys back in the day. They were swinging 36-inch, 36-ounce bats and just dropping the head of the barrel on the ball. It still happens today. There's still guys in the big leagues that still do that. Aaron Judge still uses a traditional end-loaded bat. Aaron Judge is also a specimen of a human being, which I think I said last episode too, right? We cannot let the best hitters in baseball teach us how to do what the more common baseball player is going to be able to achieve. We have to use the mass majority and understand what success looks like within those guys to see how advantages can be gained across baseball.
Heck yeah. So torpedo bats, baseball and Stitch, we're all over them. We love them. Give us more torpedoes. We're about it. There you go. Thoughts on the first 3 games of Major League Baseball. We're so excited. We're going to be here all year breaking it down and really getting into the nitty-gritty of what is happening. However, let's move to something we're extremely excited to share with all of you, and that is our episode with the man, the myth, the legend himself, Tim Kurkjian.
We have an incredible guest here today. We are very lucky to be joined by Hall of Fame baseball writer, analyst Tim Kurkjian. Tim, we are so thankful to have you. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule, opening week of the baseball season, to talk with us about something all three of us absolutely love, and that's baseball. So thank you for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure, and as I've told you guys, anything for the Flax family. What not everyone knows is I spoke at the St. John's High School banquet about 15 years ago, and I wore a sweater to the banquet, and I am the featured speaker. And every 16-year-old, 17-year-old was wearing a three-piece suit, and I'm wearing a sweater.
That sounds about right.
So mortified that I got in my car and I drove home as fast as I could in order to change into something more appropriate. I got a speeding ticket on the way home, and because I was running a little late, I got a speeding ticket on the way back. So, love the Flax family, but you guys owe me $120, right?
I was going to ask if you sent the bill to St. John's.
No, I paid it. It was my fault. I should have known. St. John's, big time, classy high school. You got to wear a coat and tie. I've never been underdressed in my life, and I was that night. But I got it done eventually. Really bad.
We're recording in live, so the Flax family now knows that they owe you that $120. This is perfect.
Yeah. Check will be in the mail. I'll let my mom know.
Well, thanks very much.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I mean, I know you've been writing in this game for 45 years. Now you're dipping your toe into the podcast game, which both Ryan and I really enjoy. I think that's a great place kind of for us to start here.
Yeah. Go ahead. Evan and I are avid listeners of Is This a Great Game or What? Your Adam Dunn episode that dropped today with your son Jeff was awesome. And the big place that we want to start, Tim, is baseball is a game that all of us here love and you and your son share a deep love for. And what is it like to have a podcast about something like baseball with your son?
Well, it's been the highlight of my career. There's no way around that. We've always wanted to work together, and now we get to, and we're a perfect team because Jeffrey is a really smart kid. He doesn't know a whole lot about baseball, so that's where I fill in. And since I don't know anything about anything else, that's where he fills in. Pop culture, music, oh my gosh. And the whole technology thing, poor Pop, I am so lost in technology. And so every week, almost every week, I go to Philadelphia, which Evan knows is 3 hours from where we live. And I do that because it's always better when you're face-to-face with your partner. But I also go there just in case there is a technical problem in my house, which there often is. There is no more scary feeling for me than something's gone wrong and I don't know how to fix it. If something goes wrong in Philadelphia, Jeffrey, 31-year-old wizard, can figure this stuff out. So it has been so much fun to do this, and now we're doing 2 episodes a week instead of 1, so we have another one that comes out on Friday, and we're just thrilled that we get to do this together after all these years, because fellas, I'm not getting any younger. If I don't do this, I may never get a chance to do it.
I felt like we were falling behind. I heard you guys make that announcement a couple weeks ago, and I was just like, oh my God, now we're going to have to start putting out 2 episodes a week. We're going to have to keep up.
Well, I don't know how we're going to do it because it's a 2-man gang here. Like, we have no producers.
We know. Oh, yeah.
Nobody else. We don't make any money doing it. Jeffrey's wife is the greatest, Emily, and she said, go ahead, do 2 days a week. But Jeffrey's the one that does most of the work. I provide most of the content, but he's the one that's got to put it together. He's co-host, producer, director, technical advisor, everything.
That's what I like to say about Ryan. I just bring the color commentary. He does a lot of the heavy lifting.
That's you being nice.
Thank goodness for you young guys, because every time I see Jeff, the first thing he says is, you having any problems with your cell phone? And then when I am, he will fix it for me.
That's a good son. It's a good son.
Totally agree. Your guys' episode this week was awesome. For anybody who doesn't know, they got to interview Adam Dunn this week. Adam Dunn is an absolute character, and as a DC guy wearing my national stuff, he brought a lot of joy to my life as a young man. So great episode this week, and we appreciate you again.
Yeah, and I miss the Adam Dunns of the world. As a writer, I always search out somebody that you can talk to about anything. And Adam Dunn was one of those guys. I don't necessarily need to speak to the greatest player in the game every day. I want to talk to the guys who are going to make me smile, who are going to make me laugh, and who are going to teach me something. And Adam Dunn has always done that, and he did that for 40 minutes on this podcast. That's why it makes it so much fun that we can get him chuckling again. Haven't heard that in a while because we really miss him since he retired.
I can tell that by all of your guests because I can tell that they've already got that relationship with you and that you seek those people out because everyone who comes on is that type of person. Like the Keith Hernandez episode the other day, I've never laughed harder at a podcast. Just listening to you guys go back and forth I was on a plane listening to it, and the lady next to me kept looking over because she was she couldn't understand why I was dying laughing in my seat. So yeah, I can tell those are the types of people that you seek out pretty often.
Well, the key is to ask them a question that they don't get asked all the time. So we asked Keith Hernandez about Stratomatic. Again, he talks about it here or there, but, we didn't ask him, hey, tell us about what a great first baseman you were, That's the key. And with Adam Dunn, I'll never forget the look on his face in this. I asked him, because I do this to all the people I interview, when's the last time you dunked a basketball? And his eyes got this big. Like, I can't believe you asked me that. I did it 2 days ago. And he was so proud of the fact that he could still dunk a basketball like 5 years after retiring. And he showed his kids, look, Dad, even at his age and his size can still dunk it. Those are the things that get that.
Oh, that's amazing.
Those are the things that get players going, is when you ask them something that they usually don't get asked. That's what we strive for all the time on this podcast. We interviewed Pete Fairbanks, who is the closer for the Rays. This was in September, and he's like an avid reader, crossword puzzle. And I told him before we went on, I said, Pete, we might not ask you a baseball question. And he said, great. Those are my favorite interviews. So let's find something that's going to turn these guys into human beings, because once they get into their baseball speak, you may never get them out of it. Now they're talking like they're being interviewed after a game, and they have to be extra careful. We don't ever want to get them there. We want to get them laughing from the beginning and comfortable with us for the entire time.
Well, okay, so in light of that, I have a question that may be outside the reins of baseball here. Correct me if I'm wrong, you did a very short 6-month stint with Sports Illustrated doing basketball. Do I have that correct?
That is correct. I did basketball. I love basketball.
Yeah.
Only 3 things in the world I understand: baseball, basketball, and sitcoms from the 60s, which you guys have no idea what I'm talking about. But yes, I did basketball for most of the 97 season. I covered baseball at the same time, but mostly I was doing basketball. It was really weird. I loved being at the games because I love basketball, but when I show up at 5'5" and I go interview a 7-footer and start talking to them about basketball, they have every right to look at me and say, what would you possibly know about this? But
yeah.
Fortunately, that was a brief time with SI that I did basketball. I was still doing baseball, and I've done baseball every year for 45 years.
When in that 45-year period, was there ever a moment, I guess we'd call it that pinch me moment, where you were like, oh my gosh, like this is my career. This is what I'm doing, and I get to be around these types of people every day, and I get to talk to, whoever it was. Did you ever have that specific moment?
Yeah, I had a lot of them. Early on, Dan Shaughnessy, the baseball writer at the Washington Star, also a Hall of Famer, he brought me to the ballpark because I was going to be his backup. And I was like 14 years old, and I'm going to be the backup Orioles writer. I was maybe 23. So he introduces me to Earl Weaver, a manager that I grew up like worshiping. Wow. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I am on the field at Memorial Stadium, and Earl Weaver is right there. So Dan says to Earl, he says, Earl, this is Tim Kurkjian. He's going to be covering some of the games this year when I'm off. And Earl looked at me and said, fuck you, Tim, and walked away. And I went,
oh, my God.
Dan then looks at me because he sees I'm about ready to cry, and he says, "Oh, that's what Earl does for everyone that he really likes." And I'm thinking, really likes? He just met me 5 seconds ago. Well, as it turned out, that was typical Earl, and I ended up covering a bunch of games in '81. But then I covered the team every day for the Baltimore Sun in '86, and Earl was my all-time hero. He taught me more about the game than anybody that I've ever met. I could tell you hours of Earl Weaver stories. Oh. He F-bombed me the first time I met him. That was where I said, all right, this is where I belong.
Yeah, that's a nice introduction into that world. You know, it's lets you know that you're a part of the brotherhood immediately, right?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I learned an awful lot very early being a young guy. This is how young I was. I rode the team bus multiple times because writers back then were allowed to ride the same bus as the players. That is inconceivable today.
Yeah.
But I rode on team buses and I was on team charter flights because, again, it was allowed. My newspaper was okay with it. So the first time I got on the Oriole bus, how would I know this? I sat in the first seat, which is the manager's seat. And one of the players, Mike Flanagan, just walked by me and said, "You better get out of there fast, because if I showed up, Earl would have not only F-bombed me again, he probably would have taken a swing at me." So,
so you got another F-bomb right there, more than likely.
Oh, boy, that was bad.
I cannot tell you. This so funny you say that. One of my first away series when I was playing college baseball, I got on the bus, and I see this seat right in the front that's got like a nice little, thing to put your stuff on, and it's got a lot of room. And I was like, well, that's a nice looking seat. Sat down in it. Assistant coach gets on the bus and says, "Yeah, that seat's not for you. Move on." It was for our head coach. So I know the feeling.
Things we learn as young people. The goal is just to not let it happen again. We learn from our mistakes. I made 1 million of them growing up in the business, and you learn from them and make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, exactly.
Tim, and I would follow up on this question. I'm just curious. Evan and I have talked a lot about, since we've had the opportunity to do this and really start talking about baseball and our knowledge of baseball and how much we love it. Was on the flip side of a pinch me moment, was there ever a time in which you said, okay, I know exactly what I'm talking about and I should be in this room with everybody else?
I always felt, since I grew up in a baseball family, I got 2 brothers in the Hall of Fame for baseball at Catholic University. My dad was a really good player. This was the only language we spoke in our house growing up, was the language of baseball. So I still like to think, even as a really young man, I knew what I was watching. However, first full year on the beat, 1982 in Texas, I got my brains beat out because I didn't know how to do the job. I knew the game, I knew how to write a little bit, but I didn't know how to follow a story as a beat guy like I should have. So after that, it was the next year, 1983, where I figured out how to do the job. I knew what I was watching. I became much more comfortable talking to the players, and that's when I said to myself, all right, maybe I can do this. I know in 82, I kept thinking, I'm getting killed here. I'm not sure I'm cut out for this, but I love the game so much. I knew I was in the right place there. I just had to learn how to do the job. And when I did, I said, okay, maybe I actually belong here.
Yeah, I always feel like it's so hard with statistics and talking about different players and what you know exists, what you know is true, and saying it with confidence and not thinking, oh, I might be saying the wrong thing or I might be wrong about this. And I think at some point you just have to accept that it's okay to be wrong sometimes, and it's okay that somebody might tell you that you're wrong. And I think that's a hurdle to get over.
Right. And a lot of things like that happened when I was younger, but, I really had some great guidance from some other writers. Randy Galloway, who had been the baseball writer at the Dallas Morning News, who became the columnist, and I followed him on the beat, which was like following John Wooden at UCLA. You guys are too young to even understand that. Point is, I got a lot of assistance from from some writers. And, Buddy Bell was the best player on the Rangers in '82. And I know he recognized right away, this poor little guy is overmatched. He shows up every day and he loves it and he cares and he knows what he's watching. So instead of burying me, which Buddy would never do to anybody, but instead of burying me, he just gave me a break here and there and gave me, like, for instance, at first spring training in '82 as a beat guy, Mickey Rivers, center fielder for the Rangers, who was making $450,000 a year, came up to me 3 weeks into spring training and said, "Tim, can I borrow $2,000? And I said, "Mickey, I'm making $12,000. I don't have $2,000. Mickey, who was one of the all-time greats, one of my favorite people ever, and a really great player in his day. But he put his arm around me and said, "Tim, don't ever loan Mickey any money. You'll never see it again." But these are the lessons that you learn as a young guy, and you just hope you learn from them and don't let them happen again.
Well, now you get to pass the wisdom along.
Sure, that's what I love to do. I love talking to young people about where they are and what they're doing because I was just like them. I was just a lot shorter.
We both lived through that.
Yes.
I like to say I was very fortunate my junior year of high school to finally hit a growth spurt, but I went into high school under 5 feet and under 100 pounds soaking wet. So I know a little bit about the world of feeling slightly undersized.
Yeah, well, you did that in the 9th grade, Evan. I did that in the 10th grade. 4'11", 94 pounds, looking really good. Graduated from high school, 5'2", 120, looking really good.
As many times as
start me on size, all right?
As many times as I've ever said that, no one's ever beaten me on that. So
You better stand down, Flax.
you win.
I once had a height off with Jose Altuve, who's legit 5'6". So
Yeah,
a couple of players said you got to have a height off with Altuve.
sure.
And I said, "Well, I've never won one of these." And he goes, "Yeah, neither have I until now," because he's an inch taller than I am. But again, Evan, you know this as a little guy. The beauty of this sport is it's open to all shapes and sizes.
Yep.
You have the skill to play it. It almost doesn't matter what you look like. I mean, Dustin Pedroia's hands are half the size of my hands. I have big hands for a little guy, and yet he was a great player. Altuve was a tiny little guy, and yet Alex Cora, then with the Astros, told me years ago, pound for pound, Jose Altuve is the strongest man in the game because he knows how to play. He has skill. He knows he has timing. He has all of that. So that's what I tell young kids all the time. Don't get turned off by the fact that you're smaller than everyone else. You can make it work. And Billy Wagner just went to the Hall of Fame, and he's listed at 5'10". He is not 5'10". And he threw 100 miles an hour at about 5'8" and a half. Just another reminder, if you have the skills, you can play this beautiful game. If you don't have the skills, you have no chance. No matter how athletic you are, no matter how big, strong, and fast you are, and I've seen it. I've seen guys from all sorts of other sports, amazing athletes, try to play baseball, having never played before, and it's embarrassing how bad they are. But the point goes again. If you haven't played it, it's too hard to play. It's too hard to play anyway.
There's a level at which
it's impossible.
There's a level at which I'm convinced Major League Baseball keeps having basketball players and football players come and throw first pitches just to show everybody how hard it is to actually throw a baseball correctly. It's just to make all of us look good.
Yeah, Darrelle Revis, who at one point was the best cover corner in the NFL, whatever that means. I don't understand the NFL anymore, ever since they went to the bubble screen and the skinny post, whatever those things mean. But I was on the field with Darrelle Revis maybe 10 years ago, and he's throwing out the first ball at a Rays game, and I'm the dugout reporter, so I'm right on the field. So he looks at me, has no idea who I am, not like that's important. He goes, "How do you do this?" So I think he means, am I supposed to go to the top of the rubber and throw it from there, or can I throw it from the dirt in front of the rubber? He was asking me, how do you throw a baseball? I don't know how to do this. And I found that almost impossible to believe. But my point has always been, you put a ball of any kind into the hands of a baseball player, and they're going to look like they know what to do with it.
Yep.
Because they all were multi-sport stars in high school, because the skills required to play baseball transfer to the other sports way easier than your football and basketball skills transfer to baseball. Every time I watch Patrick Mahomes play, and that guy's freaking tremendous. You guys know he was a great basketball player. I've seen him play. He looks like Allen Iverson. I don't know if you remember Allen Iverson.
Oh, we remember AI. Don't worry.
All right. Yeah. And he was a great shortstop / pitcher in high school. So when you watch him throw a ball sidearm in a football game, it's because he knows how to make the throw from shortstop to second on the side like this. When he throws a pass left-handed, which we've seen, that's a pass a point guard has to make all the time. He threw a pass in an exhibition game this year behind his back. I mean, he looked like Jason Williams, white chocolate. It was amazing. But I believe he's the great quarterback that he is because he's a basketball player and because he's a baseball player. And those two sports make him an even better football player.
This is a great point too, and that's something that we wanted our audience to hear. Is you are a very big proponent of not specializing in sports, and Evan and I both happen to agree with that, especially at a young age. And we'd love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on that.
There's no doubt. Again, the common denominator of every major league player I've met, multi-sport star in high school. You're a soccer player and you use your feet all the time. Omar Vizquel, Nomar Garcia-Parra, it's going to make you a better shortstop. When you play football and you come out of the football season at the beginning of October, beginning of November, and you've just finished a football season, you're in great shape, you're competitive, and now you need a change. Go make the basketball team. I tell every kid who cares to listen, play baseball as much as you can, but when November 15th comes around, put the bat and ball down and go make the basketball team. The hand-eye coordination, the conditioning that you will get, the fun that you will have. Nobody loves baseball more than me, but you shouldn't play it 12 months out of the year. You'll get burnt out. The game is so hard to play. Go have some fun playing something else, and then you'll be better at baseball.
I love that. Yeah.
It's hard not to. And, as two guys who probably specialized in baseball very early, it also did a toll on our bodies. And I think you would agree that there's a lot of people, especially from an arm perspective and shoulder perspective, that it's really hurt at a higher level and later on in their careers because of it.
Right. I mean, we have a lot of kids today who are throwing off a mound 12 months out of the year, and they're 12 years old. That's not a good thing for them. We wonder why so many pitchers get hurt early. Tom House, who knows more about the throwing of a baseball than anyone I've ever seen, told me once, he said, our kids today are pitching too much and not throwing enough. He said, when we were kids, we were throwing a soccer ball, a football, a basketball. We were throwing rocks across the lake. Now kids are making the same motion every single day off a raised area, and they're going to get hurt doing that. So I do the Little League World Series every year. It's my favorite event. Let's be clear, they send me there because of scale and context, because I'm the same size as half the kids there. In fact, some researcher at ESPN actually looked up one of the years that 52% of the players at the Little League World Series were taller than me. I thought that was a bit much. I thought it was unnecessary.
I was going to say, don't do this to yourself.
But the point is, a lot of those kids are specializing baseball at 10, 11, 12. I'm sorry, it's just too early to do that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think one of the things that I noticed growing up and even getting to high school, as that started to happen, the guys that were the best players on even a high school team like St. John's that was a very good team were guys that we didn't see half the year because they were playing basketball or they were playing soccer or they were playing football, and they were just such athletes that they could excel at anything they did. And then these were the guys that were going to the best schools. not the kids who were specializing and playing on showcase teams and running themselves ragged. And it's shifted totally in the last, 5-10 years to kind of being such a gauntlet for these kids even at 14, 15 to 18 years old. I don't know how you get to college and still have anything left at that point.
Right. So Joe Mauer, Hall of Famer, was going to play football quarterback at Florida State. And he was an all-state basketball player in Minnesota. And I asked him once, and he's the most humble guy in the world. I said, Joe, come on, how many points a game did you score your senior year? He goes, I didn't score. I was only a defensive specialist. So I pressed him. He averaged 22 points a game his senior year.
Sure.
He was just a defensive specialist. And on a different level, Billy Hamilton, who's still playing, the speedy Billy Hamilton, he told me once that he scored 27 points a game his senior year in high school on the basketball team. He scored 31 touchdowns as a wide receiver, and he got drafted to play baseball because he felt this is my best opportunity, and it was.
Wow.
He's very slight, but he can fly. So I asked him, this was rhetorical, I said, Billy, was baseball the hardest game you've ever played? He went, not even close. He said, I used to be able to tell my body when I played basketball and football, just be athletic. Just let your body take over and you'll be fine. And he was. But when you tell your body to take over, when Jacob deGrom is throwing 98 miles an hour with a run on it, it doesn't matter how athletic you are. When he's that good, you can't just tell yourself, be athletic and hit this guy. It doesn't work that way, not in baseball.
I think it was Jock Peterson was the number one wide receiver on his high school team.
Who was his quarterback, Flax?
Oh, who was his quarterback?
Somebody you should know well. Tim, do you know who his quarterback was in high school?
Jock Peterson's quarterback. No, you guys are going to teach me something for once. Let's go.
And let's try not to be wrong, because if I'm wrong, I'm going to be really upset. But I do believe his quarterback in high school was it was either might have been Matt Stafford, I believe. He had somebody big. I thought it was Matt Stafford.
Matt Stafford was with Clayton Kershaw.
Myself,
Matt Stafford was with Clayton Kershaw at Highland Park in Texas. But I do know that I believe it was A.J. Brown was the number 2 wide receiver on the high school team with Jock Peterson. So you want to talk about athletes that end up playing baseball. He was the number 1 wide receiver over a guy who is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
Right. So Ben Zobrist used to play for the Rays and the Cubs, and Ben Zobrist was a really good player. He's been out of the game for 5 years. So, and he's the most modest guy in the world, but he was a great high school basketball player and a tremendous high school baseball player. So the football coach comes to him his senior year and says, Ben, you need to play football. You're a great athlete. And Ben said, well, I've never played football before. And the coach said, look, just go out there, be an athlete, go get the ball. And Ben Zobrist was named the MVP of his team his senior year.
Sure.
Never played the sport before. Now, if anyone thinks I'm saying football is easy, look, that's one sport I would have zero chance to play. Look, I can run a corner route and a post, but if someone's going to come kill me going across the middle, you can leave me out, because being my size is ridiculous. The point is, Ben Zobrist had never played football, but because of his baseball skills, it transferred so easily to playing another sport. He just let his athleticism take over, and he went and got the ball, which is what baseball players are trained to do on both sides of the ball.
I want to be cognizant of your time, and we have a couple other questions here that we do really want to ask you. And the first one, and you talk about this with a lot of different players, and I know it's a question that you ask guys, is why do you wear the number that you wear? So my question to you is, what number would you be wearing if you were starting on a Major League Baseball team come Thursday opening day, and why?
Well, this is going to get sad. I would wear number 2. My brother Matt, who died of ALS a couple of years ago, wore number 2 for Catholic University. His jersey is right here in my office. I would wear number 2 as a tribute to my brother. But you're right. So Keith Hernandez told us a story the other day that I should have known, but I didn't. I asked him very naively, why did you wear number 37, your first year with the Cardinals. I mean, it's not the sexiest number in the world, and he's the greatest number 37 of all time. And believe me, I know every greatest player of all time from number
I would not doubt you saying
1 to
that.
55. That's how little of a life that I have. So Keith Hernandez tells me a story I've never heard. He said, well, Mickey, I'm born on the same day as Mickey Mantle. So 7 was always my favorite number. But depending where you were, you couldn't wear 7 because it was already taken or a Hall of Famer had it. So he said, but I had to have 7 in my somewhere in my number. And the first number I got to that had a 7 was 37. So when he got traded to the Mets, he was going to wear 37, but of course, Casey Stengel, Hall of Fame manager, wore number 37. That's how he ended up with 17. So just go ask a naive question like, why did you wear that number? And this is the answer that you get. That's why it's so important to prepare. But every once in a while, by not preparing for that, I learned something that I didn't know. And my reaction was so spontaneous and so genuine because I didn't know that. And
I was
So
shocked
cool.
that wasn't one that you had already known, but I appreciate you sharing that with us. That is,
should have known it, and I didn't, and I'm ashamed that I didn't. But it sure made for a better discussion.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So real quick, I feel like we've got to hit this one because you're Mr. Box Score, and we know it and we love that. And there's got to be a box score at some point in time across your 45 years in this sport that you've come across that was just the most unbelievable box score you've ever seen. And I'd be curious to know what that was.
Well, I'm not sure it's a badge of honor to be Mr. Box Score.
I think it's
To
great.
us it is. To us it absolutely is.
I did cut out every box score from every major league game for 20 years and taped them in my box score book for 20 years. And I never missed a day in those 20 years. So not once did I forget to do it and said, all right, I'll do 2 days tomorrow. So I did it exactly the same way for 20 years, which I think we can all agree is way more impressive than any streak by Cal Ripken Jr. I mean, I don't think there's any way.
Agree. That's
Absolutely.
not getting broken.
Box scores
No.
are the greatest. If you watch them and look at them closely enough, things are going to leap out at the page at you. At least they do to me. So many things out there I just can't see. I can't. But I can see box scores because I've been reading them and watching them my whole life. So years ago, catcher for the Rockies, Ben Petrick, had this line, 3-0-0-4. So he had 3 at-bats in a game, did not score a run, did not get a hit, and drove in 4 runs.
Yeah.
So he told me years later, I said, Ben, what was the deal with that line? And he goes, after the game, I said, boy, I had a bad game today. And he said, then I looked at the box score and said, hey, I had a pretty good game. He knocked in 4 runs without getting a hit. So there are a million examples. That's my favorite one because you just look at it and you just slap your forehead like, how in the world could this happen?
Do you know off the top of your head how those 4 RBIs
Yeah,
came
and it
to
was like 2 sacrifice flies, a ground out, and I hit my pitch with the bases loaded or something like that. I should know. It was like 25 years ago. Sorry.
That's amazing.
But
I knew
there's
knew for a fact.
all sorts of way to drive in a run.
I knew for a fact when we were talking yesterday and really thinking about what we wanted to ask in the realm of stats that you would have something so unique to that answer. So I genuinely appreciate what you just came to the table with. That was phenomenal.
Well, my pleasure. Again, I don't know much about a lot of things, but I love box scores because I've always read them and I always will.
I love that.
Listen, I understand it from a standpoint of reading has not always been my thing, but I feel very comfortable when a box score pops up. I can read that like any page. It's just something different.
I know so many people who learn to read by reading the box scores in the paper. And back when I was growing up, they would have a 1-paragraph little summation of the game. Evan Flax made 3 errors in 1 inning yesterday.
Sure.
St. John's lost based on his defensive, whatever. Just kidding. Evan could play. Flax could hit. My God, the first time I went to see Jeff Flax play, again, born on my birthday, I went up to one of these little rec league fields and stuff, and he's in high school. I swear the guy was throwing like 88 miles an hour. Jeff Flax is like 13 years old. And his first at bat, he hit a laser up the middle for a hit. I went, oh my God, this kid can really hit. He was a really good player. All the Flaxes were. Yes, box scores are the best, no doubt.
Yeah, one of my few hitting coaches, and he always told me, as long as you get your foot down, velocity will never beat you. And he proved it many times.
Right.
But the last question we are going to ask you that we really want to leave you with here, because we are so close to opening day, what does opening day mean to you?
Well, it's a holiday. I mean, parents take their children out of school to go to opening day. It really matters. And, I'm old enough to remember when the ceremonial first game of the season was always played in Cincinnati.
Yep.
And they would have a parade that ran through the city. And it was breathtaking to watch. So it doesn't matter whether we're opening in Japan or where we're opening. Opening day still really, really matters to so many people. And again, it just reminds you that baseball is here. We finally made it back. Warm weather is ahead. Summer vacation is coming. And we're going to do all of this in the same calendar year, as opposed to the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL, where we're not even sure, were they the winners in 86 or did they win in 87? Baseball is all done like this.
I love that.
I, again, 68 years old, covered the game for 45 years. I love opening day as much as any. So tomorrow night, Wednesday night, for all of us great baseball fans, will be the last worthless evening that we have to spend, because
That's exactly right.
Here comes baseball. So good.
That's exactly right.
Just told my boss today that there will be a PTO day happening on Thursday, and very little can stop that.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
Tim, thank you so much for taking some time. You have been a voice of joy for Evan and I throughout our childhood, and what you've done from a journalism perspective and a broadcast perspective has been near and dear to both of our hearts, because you are, again, one of the voices that we grew up listening to and helped us love baseball the way that we do. So thank you so much again for being the inaugural interview for Baseball Unstitched.
Yeah.
This has been an absolute joy.
My pleasure. And you guys did a great job. You asked a bunch of good questions, and you were energized. That's the way to go. Just keep up the good work, okay?
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
There it is. Thank you again so much for listening. Tim, you were wonderful. If you have not listened to Tim and Jeff's podcast, Is This a Great Game or What? We highly recommend it. A wonderful, wonderful place to get a baseball fix. They've had some great guests on throughout their time. And one thing Tim said to us in his interview is, it's always great to ask these guys questions that have nothing to do with baseball and allow them to share their personality with you and learn more about them from an overall standpoint. His podcast recently done, or their podcast recently done with Adam Dunn, was excellent. Keith Hernandez was excellent. So again, please take a look. We highly recommend. And once again, Tim, thank you so much for being on the pod. Flax, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. We're here. We're in it. The season has begun. You'll hear a lot more from us on these topics throughout the year. The last thing I have is like us, follow us, subscribe, whatever it is, on all the apps to get your most up-to-date news and information across all of Major League Baseball. And like Ryan said, we sincerely thank Tim for joining us, being our inaugural guest on our podcast, which we're hopefully going to have some more of down the line. And thank you to any of the new listeners that are here. We hope you stick around with us for more episodes the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'll leave you with one. Kyle Teal's raking, and right now his position is catcher. We need to protect Kyle Teal's knees because we would like to see Kyle Teal hit longer. Funny thing, I have no pull in any organization by any means, but I did text my mentor and I said, hey, you guys talking about this? And I'm not going to tell you what his response is, but I'm hoping they are, because I would love to see Kyle Teal get to play baseball and have good knees for a long, long time. Go check out the home run he recently hit. I believe it was on Saturday, and by golly, was it a nuke?
Oh, yeah.
Either way, thank you so much again. This has been Baseball Unstitched. We'll see you next week.